Hi guys. Today I'll be presenting to you CodeceptJS, and my catchy title is Unifying Testing Landscapes, which was generated by ChatGPT. And a little bit about me. I was born in China and I grew up in New Zealand. I am currently a QA lead at Tier 4, which is an autonomous driving company. I work in the web.auto department in Tier 4, which is a DevOps platform for autonomous driving software. And I have just one quick slide to show you guys what it actually is because it's very hard for people to understand. So at the bottom left, there is pilot.auto, which is autonomous driving software, the department that develops autonomous driving software. And once it's developed and a new version is released, it has to be tested with simulations and stuff like that because it's autonomous driving. And then that's where my department, web.auto, comes in, and we provide the simulators and CI/CD tools, kind of like, I don't know, GitHub Actions or Circle CI. And then we allow the pilot.auto's QA team to test their software. And that's pretty much what web.auto is. It's a department which provides cloud and web tools to test and do DevOps stuff with the autonomous driving software. Yes, and we are hiring QA engineers and SETs, so let me know if you want to look for a new job. I currently live in Sapporo, and my hobbies are hiking, snowboarding, and playing Go. And I am also currently working remotely in China, so if my internet is kind of sketchy, sorry about that. Okay, with today's agenda, first, it's not going to be a deep dive, but it's more of a introduction of what CodeceptJS is and what kind of features it provides. So first I'll go through what is CodeceptJS, and then I'll go through a few practical applications of it I thought about for random use cases that might be applicable. And then I will have one demo, which is project initialization, because I feel like most of you guys probably haven't used CodeceptJS before. So I just want to show you guys how you could get started with CodeceptJS. And for demo two, which is another project which I pulled off of the internet, I'm going to use that project to explain the file structure and execute a couple tests to show you guys what it looks like. And then I will talk a little bit about the limitations of this tool, and then we can go through to the Q&A. First, what is CodeceptJS? It's a successor of Codeception, which was a PHP full stack testing tool. I've honestly never looked into it, but apparently it was kind of popular, which is why there's a JS spinoff now called CodeceptJS. A little bit about the syntax. It has a unique scenario-driven style syntax based on behavior. So if you look at the test case below, all of the syntax is very aligned with the user's actions. So it is linear to user actions, which means that so user would go on the page, and then you would use the method I am on a page, or field, or check option, or click, or with assertions, you would do I.C and stuff like I don't see in current URL and stuff like that. A lot of functions are provided in this kind of format so that I guess when the developer wants to implement their custom code, they will also follow this kind of format, and it's easy for the I guess stakeholders, or the stakeholders with the test automation, to have a common kind of language that everyone can understand, kind of like BDD, but I'll go into that more later. And it's, yeah, as I mentioned before, a guideline for writing tests. And the most unique thing about CodeceptJS its biggest gimmick is probably that it's a high-level wrapper for other frameworks like Playwright, WebDriver IO, APM, Test Cafe, etc. So it is not actually a tool that interacts directly with the browser or injects JavaScripts and stuff into the browser like other tools. It actually is, all it is a wrapper that provides a common set of tools that you can use to interact with these helpers, as CodeceptJS would call it. On the next slide, I'll have a better diagram here. Yeah. So CodeceptJS is pretty much a wrapper. It has a lot of helpers under the hood. So you can configure CodeceptJS to work with any of these helpers and other helpers not shown on this diagram. So if you can see, there's Playwright and Puppeteer, which both use the CDP, Chrome DevTools protocol, which I'm not that familiar with. But if you configure CodeceptJS to work with Playwright, then it's going to run with Playwright, and you'll be able to have all of the functionality of Playwright. So, for example, being able to access the Safari browser or Chrome and Electron and stuff like that. And if you configure it with Test Cafe, then you'll be able to access the browser with Test Cafe's proxy server and injecting JavaScript into the browser. And I forgot what browsers Test Cafe can access, but I think it was only one, like Chrome or something. Yes. So you can see it's very flexible. And now we're going to go into some of these practical applications that I thought of. So the case one is highlighting its flexibility. So imagine there's a test automation engineer called, let's just call her Anna. And Anna would like to try out Playwright as she has heard a lot of good things on the internet and at meetups and on Reddit. She's seen a lot of good things about Playwright and has a lot more cross-browser support than other tools. But the problem is that her team and herself has more experience with Test Cafe. So if something goes wrong with Playwright, then she probably, as the team lead, will not be able to do anything about it because her team, all of her resources only have experience with Test Cafe. So she's kind of like hopping on the fence, not sure which one to decide. And she also thought about doing a proof of concept, just a quick proof of concept with both of these tools, or with Playwright, which she is not familiar with. But then she also does realize that a lot of test automation problems happen somewhere down the road when you're already too far into the rabbit hole. So there's also that problem as well. So the solution is, of course, CodeceptJS, because of course you can start off with CodeceptJS plus Playwright to try it out first. And then you can switch to Test Cafe with minimum effort by switching the helper if any problems occur. So all you have to do is probably write a new config file to work with Test Cafe and then re-implement some of the custom functions that you implemented with Playwright's lower level API. And yeah, it is very flexible. So this would be one practical use case of CodeceptJS. Another practical application I thought of, page object support. She's not Anna, but maybe let's say Hannah. She's a developer, but she's never written any UI tests, so she doesn't know too much about page objects, which is a very common design pattern in developing test automation frameworks or code. And she is worried about creating technical debt because she's heard all these horror stories about unmaintainable test frameworks, and she's seeing all these legacy test frameworks, test suites that just doesn't really provide much value, and she's very scared of the technical debt down the line. But Hannah did some Googling, and she found out that if she used page objects, maybe the code would be a little bit more manageable. But in practice, page objects are kind of hard to, they're not hard to implement, but creating the right level of abstraction and creating the right functions so that you don't encapsulate too much. You don't create too much abstraction. It's kind of hard. For example, there's like you can on a simple page, you can probably do like hundreds of different actions, and not every single one of these actions should probably be put into a function. So she's kind of unsure of how to go about creating these page objects. And a solution is CodeceptJS again. CodeceptJS provides guidelines and integrations with page objects, and it generates templates for you. These templates are very bare bones skeleton templates, but they do help people who with no experience start. So with page first is page objects. So you can generate it with npx CodeceptJS GPO, which stands for generate page objects. And on the bottom, you can see a skeleton page object code snippet that is generated. It's very very bare skeleton, but it kind of gives inexperienced people a starting point. And next, there's page fragments, which can also be generated with another command, which I forgot to put here. Page fragments are modals, components, and widgets. So I think most people would just put them under a components folder. But the difference between this one and page objects is that it always has a root selector in the skeleton. So I'm sure if you've worked with modals, there's always like some kind of root selector you put into the component class. And whatever actions are going to be implemented in this file, it's going to use the within function. So within the modal component. So it kind of makes sense and it's very easy to follow. And next step, it's also you can also generate this kind of file, but this one is for I actually didn't have this, I think, when I used CodeceptJS, but for this one, you can it's for multi-page actions. So in the below example, it's like a create user function, and you would first access the two functions on user page, and then you'd access the function on the permission page, which comes down to create the user. Yeah. So it doesn't take away all of the ambiguity that I talked about, but it definitely makes it easier for people with no experience with the test automation design patterns to make the right decisions and create the right files, so to speak, or have the right mindset. So practical application case 3, scenario-driven syntax. So this is another person. I can't think of any more names, but she's saying that she would like to follow BDD, but other than the Gherkins file in her experience, only people who write the tests can understand test code. So this is a common thing that happens with BDD, and normally the test code is written by the test automation engineer or whoever write the tests, and everyone else only understands the feature files or the Gherkins files. And it's still very hard for other people to read test code. So test investigation, maintenance, and stuff like that still falls with people who write the tests, which is a very common, depends on how you define BDD, but it's a common problem people have. And I remember this quote from cucumber.io, which is like the main BDD guys. So BDD is a technique for designing and developing software. They produce tests as a byproduct, but they're not testing activities. So obviously, BDD does not end with the feature file. And if you can make the tests easier for business or people who don't write the tests to understand, then obviously that is going to be better BDD than than a test suite that is entirely dependent on the whoever wrote the tests or the QA people or whatever. So BDD is probably, in my mind, not a binary thing, but more of a gradient thing. So with CodeceptJS, you can create test files which will let you have which will let you get closer to true BDD, so to speak, even though probably no one can achieve true BDD. Yes, because the functions are very easy to understand for everyone, and developers who implement these functions are extra functions are going to follow these patterns, so it will continue to be easy to understand, presumably. And lastly, scalability and faithful to the user. So we've all seen the test pyramid. If you go up the test pyramid, it becomes more faithful to the user behavior. If you go down the pyramid, it becomes faster, cheaper, and more stable. So we already know the test pyramid. But in terms of the E2E tests, there are, for example, WebDriver IO, which uses the WebDriver protocol, and Test Cafe, which injects JavaScript into the browser. So there's some debates on which one is better, because WebDriver IO, it's going to mimic the user behavior better because it uses the WebDriver protocol. And Test Cafe is going to be faster, but no actual user is going to inject JavaScript into the browser. So there's that debacle there as well. But I took a quick speed comparison of popular frameworks, and you can see that frameworks like Playwright have a much lower speed than WebDriver IO and Selenium. And even though it's not a big difference if the test cases, there's only a small amount of test cases, if the number of test cases increase by a lot, you will notice a difference in terms of execution time. So if you want the best of both worlds, the solution is again CodeceptJS. You could have a small critical test suite with WebDriver IO helper to be faithful to the user behavior. And then you could have a bigger test suite with Test Cafe that requires scalability and speed. So you can theoretically have the best of both worlds with one test framework or one central test base, code base. And we're going to go into a quick demo. We don't have that much time, so I'm gonna go kind of fast. So this one is a empty project. I kind of did the npm install just to save time because I don't want to spend time downloading node modules. But you do this npx create CodeceptJS, and this is a tool developed by CodeceptJS as well, which bootstraps the project. And dot obviously means initializing it in the current directory. And initialize it. And you can already run tests because in the node modules, CodeceptJS bundles a bunch of example tests in the node module. And you can see that these tests are already there, even if you don't have any like test files in your directory. I mean, yeah. And you can run the tests on this to-do MVC website. Yeah, and it passed. So you can play around with the interactive runner for CodeceptJS if you want to after you initialize the project. And then you can actually initialize your project with some test files here. So if you run this CodeceptJS init command, it's going to ask you a whole bunch of questions. I mean, this is kind of typical. The special thing here is, I guess you can choose which helper to use. In this case, I would choose Playwright. And bunch of questions, choose a browser. choose the URL of the site, whether you want it to be headed or not. And it kind of gives you a bunch of files. Yes, and then you can start writing your tests. So it's pretty easy to start, and even if you don't know how to start, there's like example tests in the node modules, as I mentioned before. So it's relatively easy, user-friendly. Yeah. So that's the first demo. Um, so we don't have much time. Let's just go to the second demo, file structure and test execution. So this is a demo I pulled off of the internet, and it's kind of old, so it's all in JavaScript. But so I have two methods, npm run playwright. This is just to show you that it can run multiple different frameworks with the same code base, because you can see here that there's only one test here, and this test is going to be ran twice. First with playwright, and then second with test cafe. So this is playwright's runner. Oh, whoops. Yes, it's kind of slow because the writer of the tests put some weights in there. But anyway, that's not the main point. Let's do it with test cafe as well. And you can see test cafe runners started as well. I thought this was really cool when I first touched CodeceptJS, because you can write the same code and it runs in multiple places. Mm. Yes. And quickly going through the file structure. Yeah, so there's a helper function where you can write helper functions. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. There's a to-do page object. When you do generate page objects, they're going to be automatically generated in the pages folder. And this is the test. So every test starts with like a feature, which is like, I guess, describe block in like Mocha. And there's the for, and then there's scenarios, which are more edge blocks in Mocha as well. Sorry, I only know JavaScript frameworks. And there's the test code inside of the edge blocks, which are scenarios. And you can add tags here, and you can filter tests, which tests to run by using the tags. Then there's the concept conf.js. So the default one here is the playwright. So you can see helper is playwright. And then there is another conf file, which is the test cafe one. And it's very easy to switch between the two. And there's not that much config to be done. And there's the package JSON README. So that is pretty much it. There's a lot more things you can do, but let's go to the next slides. Some limitations. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's another level of abstraction, which adds another point of failure. I remember when I was writing tests in CodeceptJS, there was like this problem, and I had to dig through like the CodeceptJS source code, and I found out it's not really its fault, and then I had to dig through Playwright for source code. And then, yeah, it's just another level of abstraction, and it's kind of hard to debug if there's really something that deep that's buggy. And most of the times this works fine, but there are some edge cases where you have to dig deeper. And obviously, it's another level of abstraction, which means that more maintenance and some more learning for people, I guess. And it has a small community compared to other popular tools like Cypress, Selenium, and Playwright. So a lot of the times I had to go and search in GitHub to find code examples, because the community is kind of small. And I had to find like code examples myself and scrape it off from other people's open source projects. But when you ask questions, they do reply. And accessing lower level APIs have limited IntelliSense supporting IDEs. So for example, there's this provide a function, use playwright too, and then it emulates offline mode. And then you can see that the playwright methods or API is being called set offline and click. But so this is when you want to write custom functions, which is not currently supported in CodeceptJS. But when you write these functions, there is limited IntelliSense support because there's no type here. Even if you use TypeScript, there's no like good IntelliSense here. And it also requires you to, which is the limitation of all code-based frameworks. Okay, that's my presentation. Do you guys have any questions?